football clubs.
Leeds United play at Elland Road, and clubs all around the country love having a crack at them. Does this make them a big club?
Subscribe now to see how they compare with other big football clubs.
Leeds have won a fair few trophies over their time, but do not quite match up to the elite clubs in England. Their total attendance in league football does also not put them amongst the top clubs. If we put their success and popularity into a graph comparing them against other top sides in England, we see them close to a number of clubs who have been successful in England at particular times. Is this enough for them to be considered big?
We've won plenty, but it could have been more.
Leeds have won the league on 3 occasions. They have won both the FA Cup and the League Cup once. In Europe, they won the Fairs Cup twice.
Nobody likes to come to Elland Road.
As Leeds were in the second division when they started out in the league, their average attendances were below the top flight average. But during their first season in the first division, they were able to get above average attendances. As they stayed in the top flight, or were pushing for the top flight for the remainder of the 20s, average attendances were around the top flight average for that period. But relegation caused a significant fall. Only when they were back in the first division did they start to get close to the top flight average, but they would not really challenge it for the remainder of the 30s, even though they would spend those years in the first division. Back in the second division, Leeds were not getting crowds far off the top flight average, but the gap did widen when going into the 50s. This changed in the mid-50s, and with a strong finish in the league, Leeds got above top flight average numbers again for one season. But fans reacted to relegation again, and by the early 60s, numbers had fallen by more than half. However, this did not last, as Leeds' rise to the top meant they would get comfortably better than average attendances for the next 10 seasons. Numbers would gradually fall to equaling the top flight average by the end of the 70s, and Leeds did not get much under the top flight average when they were relegated again. This is perhaps more due to the fall in attendances nationwide, as in the mid-80s, Leeds' average attendances was at one of its record slumps. Improved performances in the league saw better turnouts at the end of the 80s, and they were even able to match the top flight average when in the second division and getting above it during their second division championship winning year. A strong return to the top flight and successful years would keep Leeds' average attendances above the top flight average for 15 years straight, and it was relegation that caused it to go under. There was clearly a gap between Leeds and the top flight average now, but time spent in the third division didn't change things too much. Leeds' recovery to the Premier League saw the club getting close to the top flight average, and this was maintained even after relegation. Leeds have been getting numbers which are very strong in the second division, but would need to keep a Premier League place to beat the average of other top-flight clubs.
It's not all about being the hardest team.
It might be argued that Leeds could have won more than they did. In their glory years, they were known for an uncompromising style of play, and those who live by the sword die by the sword. It was suspected that Milan had made preparations for taking on Leeds physically by interfering with the referee's whistle and having a free run in their penalty box. Although this was not proved, the largely neutral crowd did not appreciate in any way the way in which AC Milan won the match. In one of the Premier League classics, Leeds took on a Liverpool side at Elland Road. After pegging Liverpool back from 2-0 down, they needed to come back from defeat again with Mark Viduka's performance of a lifetime, floods of entertainment at Elland Road and an extraordinary personal performance.
Proper players for a proper team.
A best ever Leeds 11 would undoubtedly include mostly players from their dominant side in the 60s and 70s. We've also added Nigel Martyn, who kept goal for the Champions League side, Gordon Strachan, the star of their last league title, and John Charles, who was at one time believed to be the best player in the world and who became Juventus's best ever foreign signing.
We've been the best, and we'll be the best again.
Leeds were elected into the Football League in 1920 with a place in the second division. They started off with a mid-table finish and would then improve their league finishes season after season until winning the second division title in 1924. They would spend 3 seasons hanging on to their place in the first division before relegation. But they went straight up again and this time shot to near the top of the first division in 1930. This didn't last as they were relegated the following season, but this time their promotion ended up in Leeds remaining in the top flight for the remainder of the 30s, with mid to low table finishes. Return after the war would see Leeds relegated, and they spent their return to the second division around the bottom of the table. For the remainder of the 40s, Leeds would have a tough time of it. But when the 50s came, Leeds would find themselves challenging for promotion mostly, with just a couple of seasons mid-table. But in the mid-50s, Leeds were promoted again, and had another good finish in their first division before fading into a lower half side. They would suffer relegation again in 1960 and headed further down the table over the next couple of seasons, but things started to change as 2 more seasons later Leeds would win the second division title. The mid-60s saw the great change, as Leeds finished the league runners-up twice in a row, then would go on to lift their first silverware, the League Cup, with the Fairs Cup in the same season. This before becoming the champions of England in 1969. Leeds would then finish second for another 3 seasons in a row. They won their second Fairs Cup and their first FA Cup before winning their second league title. Leeds has established themselves as a real force in English football, but by the mid-70s they were no longer winning titles. They were still one of the better sides in the country, but the 80s saw Leeds fall to the second division, where they would stay for 8 seasons before winning that championship. Their return to the first division was strong, and only 2 seasons after the promotion they won their 3rd league title. Leeds were unable to follow up on this, and for the rest of the 90s they were often one of the better sides in the country, but would sometimes finish mid-table. Entering the new millennium, they were not far off the title on a few occasions, but a few years later league finishes would worsen, and they eventually found themselves back in the second division. Hopes to gain promotion were not fulfilled, and in 2007 the unthinkable happened. Leeds were in the third division. They would remain there for 3 seasons before spending another 10 seasons in the second division. After winning the second division title, they had good finishes in the Premier League, but have been unable to keep their place in the top flight with any kind of stability. Leeds have won a fair number of domestic trophies, and in between have been runners-up in the league and in a variety of competitions. That includes both the European Cup and Cup Winners' Cup, so they are only able to count 2 Fairs Cup victories as part of their European trophy haul. Leeds have had strong attendances in the top flight, and when they have been in the second division, they have not been too far off the top flight average. Unfortunately for Leeds, their best performances are known for their aggressive style, rather than actual style, and that's been the case throughout much of their history. Somehow this adds to their notoriety. Most of Leeds' players are from a specific time, but they were able to dominate English football for a period, and they may have fielded the best player in the world at the time. Leeds had to wait a while for their success, and when it happened, it left them with a reputation. Some say Leeds are hated up and down the country, and many clubs really have it in for them just because of their reputation. It may be this more than the success, and not bad support, that makes them one of England's
big football clubs.
Leeds are known for rivalries with Manchester United and Chelsea. Who are their greatest local rivals?
Please comment below. Like and subscribe to Big Football Clubs to watch videos as they're released each week.